So. I know she talks to me. All right, so we'll keep moving forward because we go back over that again. So anybody who's missed it, and I can brief them too. We have a couple of people who can't be here today. So the purpose of this grant is to encourage and support eligible districts and public charter schools to increase the capacity of LEAs to either provide support to all students through a well-rounded education program, support safe and healthy students, and support the effective use of technology. Something that we're going to learn today as we go through this, if you read the legislation, these three content areas are extremely broad. With well-rounded education, the department has chosen to prioritize the work that LEAs can engage in and has limited what they can apply for. And the same thing with safe and healthy students and effective technology. All right, so an eligible applicant is any public district, school district within the state or public charter school. For this grant, BOCES is not considered an eligible applicant. If you looked at the FAQ before you came in, the 183 questions, 46 pages that it was, you will have learned lots of BOCES were eager to know if they could be an eligible applicant. They cannot. They cannot even be part of a consortium. They can be a vendor, they can be paid for services, but they cannot be any applicant or part of a consortium with this grant.
And also it says that they received Title I and 16. So.
Yes, they have had to have received a Title I allocation, which 99% of our districts do. We have a handful who do not receive a Title I allocation, and they were provided the link that we will verify that on intake that they are indeed eligible to receive the funding. So that's part of our intake process before you even get the grant application. Districts and charter schools can also apply as a consortium. They can either be districts with other districts, they can be charter schools with other charter schools, or they can be a combination of districts and charter schools. The one piece that's really important is that they cannot apply for one content area as part of a consortium and then apply for another content area as a individual LEA. It's consortia or bust, or individual LEA or bust, and they have to be part of the same consortia for all applications. So they can't cross consortium. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's see.
And again, you'll pre-screen for that.
Yes, we're gonna pre-screen for that. The other big piece is that the lead applicant of the consortia is acting as the fiscal agent, and they are not to be a flow-through mechanism for funding. So 15% of the grant activities have to apply to that lead applicant to work. They can't serve as a flow-through source. And also the applicant must engage in the equitable participation requirement. This is where they have to equitably share with all non-publics. So if you're familiar with Title I, Title II, Title III, it's a basic requirement of those funding streams. Most districts are pretty familiar with how to equitably share, and there's an assurance and an attachment within the grant application itself that they have to complete. All right. So again, just what I said is that the members need to be consistent across the consortium. They cannot be members of multiple consortiums. Questions, comments, concerns? Yes.
You had mentioned if we had any questions to go to you or Andy or Audrey. Are either of the three of you going to be reviewing applications?
Yes.
I don't think you can do that.
From what I understood from contracts is that there was no, and Jessica should be joining us at some point in time. I asked her explicitly if there was any restrictions on us reviewing applications, and she told me no.
Reviewing, no, but being a fielder of questions, I thought there was.
I will double check, but
Okay.
I thought we had asked
Yeah.
that explicitly to her, and
Okay.
she said it's up to the program office on how they wanted to manage that. I believe we cannot talk about the applications we are reviewing. So the intent is that everybody is going to be partnered within a team, and you cannot talk to your teammate about the applications in which you are reviewing, right? So if Andy and I are partnered as a team, I couldn't talk to him about it. So we will not partner ourselves with anybody who is reviewing. Does that make sense? It'll be a strategic model that we come up with. So from what I understood from Jessica, though, is that there were no restrictions on us reviewing applications.
Especially logistical questions and protocol questions, that kind of stuff, definitely, send them our way. But the discussion about individual applications or, would you give this a 4 or 5 or this kind of thing? Absolutely not. That kind of thing, Gary. So that's a good
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
Any other questions? I should open up that chat, right? Yes.
So as far as the last couple of slides that you reviewed, those would be all done in the pre-screening. It's not something as a reviewer that we would have to
Right.
check off to see if they're all in the same or not in the same consortium. Or
Right, right. Because you won't have the capability to be able to do that. So we're going to do that on intake, the tracking form that we have built. We'll be able to sort by consortium member within each bucket area so that we can see if there's duplicates across the board. The way that applications are going to be assigned is you're going to be assigned to a specific bucket. So you're either going to get just well-rounded, safe and healthy schools, or technology. You won't be cross-referencing across the bucket.
Erica, does that include the 15% that the leader of the consortium must provide services?
The 15,
Yeah, the 15% sort of flow through.
You mean pre-screen? Are they pre-screening
Right,
for that?
well, that's a pre-screen.
that's a good question. We haven't thought about that. Maybe we could. We may be able to.
You probably see it through the budget.
Right.
I don't know if you look at
So on the tail end, we're going to be reviewing all budgets as well for the allowable expenditure piece. So I'm sure we will confirm with the awarded budget that the 15% is there. The 15% is not explicitly part of the scoring rubric. The budget justification and narrative are a little bit broader than that. It doesn't get that deep into the 15% or allowable expenses. So it's probably something we can look at the tail end after we figure out who's been awarded and who has not.
The same would apply for that 25% of the technology, that you can't exceed 25% for infrastructure.
Right, for infrastructure
So
with
that's
technology.
a similar kind of concern. So,
Yeah. If you notice it, if you happen to be looking and you look for it and you notice it and it's a red flag, definitely contact one of us and let us know. But if you don't pick up on it, we will double check at the end of the day to make sure that 15% is there. I was also very negligent in not introducing you to Rebecca because we've been working intimately with Rebecca on everybody's looking around. Rebecca? Who's Rebecca? I know with Rebecca on this process and coordinating very closely because she right now has all of the Title IV guidance in her head, so we're slowly extracting it out as we take over that process. So she's been really helpful to us, especially with the FAQ and all of those pieces. So Rebecca's here today, too, if you have any questions that we can't answer. So, Rebecca, feel free to jump in and piggyback. I don't mind. It's the way that we typically present, so it doesn't throw us off. All right, so as we talked about briefly is there are 3 buckets of approved activities. You'll see these referenced in the RFP in a couple of different ways. As approved activities, as content areas, allowable activities, so the verbiage changes periodically throughout the RFP and the FAQ. So in any 3 of those fashions, these are the 3 buckets of work that they're referring to. So the first piece, well-rounded educational opportunities, has been really streamlined and limited. So if you read the RFP, the first couple of pages gave you a really broad scope about what well-rounded educational activities can look like the meaning behind them, the benefits of them. The department has chosen to limit that to improving access to foreign language instruction, arts, and music education, and promoting access to accelerated learning opportunities, including AP and IB programs and dual or concurrent enrollment programs. So what we're hoping is that people that apply in this area, we're assuming, guessing, that a lot of the applications that come in are going to be for those AP, IB areas because districts lost their funding for these pieces.
Not 100% correct. In fact, I use the money for the federal grant ended.
Right, yes.
But there is a state grant now, but the state grant won't be sufficient.
Right, yeah. So the federal, they lost their federal monies, and I apologize about not clarifying it, but they lost their federal money, so we're assuming that they're going to apply for, because they're now being, the federal money is now becoming available to them, so that they can supplement that funding so that they can pay the course fees for students, low-income students, to take their AP/IB courses. So that is our assumption, that's our hope. So a project proposal aligned with AP/IB may not be as dense as a project proposal related to the foreign language, arts, music education piece.
And physical ed is out.
So phys ed, yes, is out. It's limited to these two things. This is it. This is how the department prioritized. This is how the commissioner prioritized. And this is the direction the department has chosen to move. So they can write two proposals. And part of the reasoning behind that is because the phys ed standards are undergoing complete revision for next year. And they believe that they want those revised before we layer them in. We don't want districts to engage in work that may become obsolete next year or may be irrelevant. It would be a waste of time and effort on everybody's behalf. So these are the two focus areas under the well-rounded education piece. Is everybody familiar with concurrent dual enrollment programs? No. Okay, so we'll give you some background on that. There's a couple of pieces. So if you have questions, write them down because we're going to parking lot them and bring them back up after the break to clarify on. And if you're joining us remotely, you can use the chat to ask questions because then we will parking lot those and get answers to them and bring them back up. Okay?
So you're not going to answer it now.
No, because we're going to get in depth into each section. But I want to go into, the first piece I want to get in depth with is the safe and healthy schools piece because that's much more dense than the well-rounded education program. Yes?
Right, is it possible to make that text box bigger?
I have tried.
Right.
That one?
Still on the side.
Sharing.
Will the bottom one?
How's that?
Thank you.
All right, now I just have to figure out how to switch slides. There we go. That's good. Now, Andy, how do I switch slides in this format? With this? With the clicker?
With the arrow button.
Arrow on the side there? Yeah.
No, that just makes sense.
No.
On the keyboard, the arrow,
Yeah, I think
left
that's
and right.
fine to do it.
Nope. There we go.
Yay.
Yay! All right, so this one's extremely small. Because there's a whole lot of activities that districts can engage in related to safe and healthy students. And we want to get a little bit into this to give you a little bit of background. Did you already hand out the white paper? No. Yeah, so Audrey and Andy are going to bring around, the white paper. This is called the white paper that Michelle shared with us. And we're going to kind of dissect it a little bit. My colleagues that are on the phone, I emailed this out this morning. We're not going to read through all of it because it's just way too dense.
What does this have to do with the grant?
We wanted to give people a little bit of background behind the topic area so that we weren't coming in blind.
This topic.
This topic area, which
That's-
is,
this is-
this relates to the approved activity number 2.
It was interesting that it said you couldn't do nutrition, anything was nutrition, even though obesity was one of the concerns. That was odd.
Right, so we have narrowed in on the legislation, based on the department's priorities at this point in time. So certain things were eliminated and certain things were emphasized, in the scope of this grant. So really quickly, because this is way too much for anybody in their right mind to read, even me this morning when I got it at 6 o'clock. So we're gonna break it down. So if my friends at these 2 tables could read through page 18, which is the school culture and climate, and then give a brief synopsis to the group. And my friends at these 2 tables, 3 because this one's a little short, approach to discipline, which starts on page 20, and work together to come up with a brief synopsis of what that means. And then these 2 tables do instruction,
Starts on
page 22.
Approach to discipline.
And then,
I think it's just 2 pages.
so we'll give you about 15 minutes
Can you repeat the pages?
to do that. Yep, so right in the table of contents, so 18, right? 20, 20 and 21, yeah. Right, and you guys had instruction, right? You guys were 22.
Yes, the top.
Which was instruction. You guys were professional development.
No, we are not.
I'm CNR, I'm also too, because you're with them, right? So you guys are professional development.
Where do we find SEL core competency?
These are the bullets, just, you know.
Oh.
stumbled on that.
Page 5 defines all of the core competencies. Thank you. You're welcome.
I'll write that down.
Yeah, just remember that we're gonna do that. Well-rounded. Enrollment.
Every day is big on Tuesday. It is. I'm reading 19 right now, just to make sure.
Does anybody need more time? No? All right, so we'll start with a little summary share out from our group one.
Okay, so when we think about school culture and climate,
Well, hold on, I gotta ask everybody to be respectful of your share out. Mary?
just because this comes
We have a
from,
bunch excited.
Okay. All right, yep, Teddy, so they're gonna start their share out?
Could you stand up and turn around and tell us? I can't hear you when you sit down.
I certainly can't do that, Mr. Leon.
I'm an old man, I can tell you.
That's okay, and I could ask you to,
Okay.
So when we were talking about school culture and climate, so the first, within a school, if we think about the culture in terms of the relationships are there, how students, teachers, administrators interact with each other, you know, that's the norms of that school. That's how. It's how the school culture is accepted, and actions are being exhibited, demonstrated. So again, the culture can be seen in how the type of relationship that is present within the building. Okay? Why do they do this? Well, there is a common belief that all stakeholders value a community relationship in terms of sustaining the culture, building positive academic outcomes. That's why the culture is important, because they see that if the culture is not embraced within the relationships that are there, and any policies that come out of that, written or unwritten, then without that, the work of the students, the types of resources and the types of how teaching is done and learning is done, it won't be sustained. So they believe in this community building to make sure this is sustained, the culture is sustained. It's simple as that.
Any questions?
Any comments?
Okay. All right. The next group was approach to discipline.
There are two competing approaches. One is restorative approach versus definitive. Restorative simply sort of coaching or counseling. Of course, we want to understand why students behave unacceptable, and we want to make the students understand why it's not acceptable. Offer alternative behaviors to conflict management, and make sure they understand if they keep on repeating unacceptable behavior, then there will be consequences. So it is this kind of approach versus obviously one that would simply just dish out blame or just really falls down to approaches.
Any questions, comments, concerns? Thank you. And then we had instruction.
Okay, so this document came from our office, so I'm pretty familiar with it. Just to kind of do a quick overview, so there's these 5 competencies, which is on page 5, which Teddy talked about the culture of care. So with all these approved activities, will they be doing all of those things? But this falls under the umbrella of social emotional learning. So it's something that it's just these competencies that we believe that children all the way to adults should try to build, starting with self-awareness, to self-management, to social awareness, and building all the way up to responsible decision-making. So as far as instruction, this is something that can be taught in various ways, not only just explicit, like teaching those core competencies, but also can be integrated with other curriculum, whether it's the arts or English language arts or mathematics. And then it's also can be done just in any of those things. Let's say if a school does restorative justice or does suicide prevention, those other like trauma-informed strategies, they would integrate social emotional competencies.
Any questions? Thank you. And then we had professional development.
Alright, so basically, in the section that we read, it stated that most teachers, they want more focus on social emotional learning and education. Basically, there's not enough, they're not getting enough support PD in that area, or whatever PD they are getting, it's typically like, they go for a day, go back to the classroom, and that's it. There's no type of any ongoing coaching TA support that really, allows teachers to refine the process and work with it, no feedback. So that's really lacking. And, it's just, there's a quote in here that I kind of underlined too. It says, a teacher senses a disconnect between what they are urged to do in a PD activity and what they're required to do. According to local curriculum guides, text assessment practices, and so on, that is, if they cannot easily implement the strategies they've learned, the new practices are not supported or reinforced, and the PD tends to have little impact. So, that's something we really need to consider. I think, we need to find a way to provide that ongoing TA and coaching support if we want them to implement.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing we know is teachers do not have enough PD time. And we also know that districts do not know how to evaluate the effectiveness of PD over time, or whether it's impactful or meaningful. And I know we've done a lot of work with these districts in accountability over the last several years, getting them to recognize, are you getting your bang for your buck? I mean, you're spending all of this money on PD. How do you know it's effective? How do you know it's impactful? They never go to that follow-up piece. They do, but they don't go to the follow-up piece to see if it's, impacting student learning. So huge lift for them, huge lift. Small gains. Our last group.
We had after-school, summer school, and community school programs, and it was a short little paragraph, but basically it's saying that these programs need to have targeted social and emotional learning programs that will help contribute to students' self-concept and improve social behaviors. And then these programs should be aligned with school practices, principles, policies, and practices.
Any questions, comments, concerns? So just a note about the white paper, and this is still a draft. It's an internal document that was shared by the student support offices with us this morning. We asked actually a lot of offices for a little bit of assistance, because we want to be able to build your capacity as reviewers so that we are certain that quality applications are being approved. We're not so much concerned about the quantity of applications that get approved, but we want to make sure that quality is getting approved within this work. And this is the biggest bucket of broad concepts. So like I said, we just wanted to build that thinking out a little bit. I can go back to well-rounded if there's no more questions on this. Oh, a quick note about this list that you have. This list is in the RFP. You all have a copy of the PowerPoint. I emailed it out, I think, yesterday. I'll send you the final PowerPoint because there were a couple of additions after I sent it to all of you, or if you just want to take notes. Do you have a question?
Is this the one that said you can do no more than 4?
Yes, that's where I'm going. Yeah, they can do no more than 4 activities from this list. Yeah, so they can engage and train the trainer opportunities, or capacity building, which involves professional development for faculty, staff, parents, that grand scope of things. And again, they can't select more than 4 from the list of options. Option menu.
I know I have annoying nitpicky questions.
No, I like your nitpicky questions because you're a thinker.
So if you go back to the previous slide, it has, at the very bottom, it has this category that says other strategies. Does that really what it means? Does that really open it up to anything else? Is to improve school conditions for learning? What if we believe that health and nutrition does not improve school conditions for learning, for example?
So I'm going to go back to my guidance. I got to go back to the guidance on that one to find the definition around other, to see what the scope of other means. So give me a minute to do that. I'll do that when we break, and we'll bring that one back up. Yes, so, but as of this point in time, so the other is, from what I remember, Rebecca, correct me if I'm wrong, from what I remember from our conversations that we had, is the other really aligns to the professional development capacity building piece. So it's limited to really the capacity building within these other strategies, whereas the department didn't feel that phys ed met the spirit of the statute, if that makes any sense, within safe and healthy. Phys ed was explicitly called out in well-rounded. It wasn't explicitly called out in safe and healthy schools. But with well-rounded, the department chose to prioritize into those two areas. Questions? Yep.
Me? Well, I'm not sure because I just give the RFP, so it's true confessions, but I know that there's some activities in some schools that are addressing safe and healthy social emotional. If there's school and accountability, it's one of the tenets in the SF, and in the land of McKinney-Vento, there is an enhanced grant where 20 or 10 districts, I guess, got extra funds to pilot like a social emotional type activity. So can these districts that apply, can they refer to the work that they've already done?
They can coordinate the funds and leverage the funds. That's within their full capacity. They can't supplant in any way, but they can supplement the work that they're doing, and they can leverage the programs together to be cohesive, and that's very explicit in the statute, and it's very explicit in the guidance. And I reread it last night just to make sure.
So they would have to, if we discard the other, which would be 17, I think. So they would have to state explicitly one of the Roman 1 to 16, 4, which means Roman 1 to 16.
They should. It should be pretty clear what they're addressing based on their needs assessment. They should be able to define for you in the proposal narrative and justify what they're doing and why they're doing it.
So it may not be exactly that language, but it's got to be fit.
Right. It's got to be a fit into that scope of work. Other questions? I'm gonna get out of this with you for a minute just
one
to
moment.
see.
Could it be 1 or 2? Does it have to be 4, or it could be less?
It could be less. It's up to 4. Yep, it could be less. I just wanted to come out to see if any of our friends remote had any questions. If you do, type them into the chat. The chat function should be is active, but it doesn't look like it. So we'll come back in this. Let's see. So we can come back to well-rounded because well-rounded is a little bit easier. So for music and arts, an LEA may use funds for programs and activities that use music and the arts, which may include dance, media arts, theater, visual arts, as tools to support student success through the promotion of constructive student engagement, problem solving, and conflict resolution. And within the guidance, they guide them to it's called Arts EdSearch, which is a clearinghouse of rigorously reviewed evaluation research concerning the efforts behind arts and music. And that is the scope of work within the arts and music framework.
Is that somewhere in any of our documents?
I will send this to you. It's within the guidance itself.
The ESSA guidance.
The ESSA guidance, yep. And then within the foreign language bucket, an LEA may use funds to support instruction in foreign languages, which is essential for students to fully participate in today's global economy and increasingly diverse communities. And that's how they would have to frame their proposal narrative. Questions? So the use of funds is really broad within the buckets themselves. As long as they can justify what they're doing through their needs assessment, which we're going to get into, they should be able to build a program.
Let's say they district wanted to do something with AP, and they were really a small district, so it had to be, virtual, not like right in the classroom. Could they buy technology for that, for a grant in this category, if they needed the technology to offer the advanced placement option?
I don't know.
Are you saying?
Yeah, I'd have to look
So
too.
you want to use a percentage of your funding when you're well-rounded by technology?
In order to implement a program for AP, if you're in a small rural district and you can't do it.
I'll just double check. I don't want to say yes or no.
But, and again, kind of going back to what Erica just said, if they've justified that need
Right.
through the need statement, that they're lacking the capacity to let's say, have kids do this online, then that's really the key that you're looking for.
I just wanted to make sure it wasn't prohibited and that we'd have to disqualify it.
So that's a good question, disqualification. At this point in time, we're not disqualifying any applications. We're scoring it according to the rubric. If an application is disqualified, it's really going to be for the lack of a signature or something to that effect that we will do on the front end. But you will not have to disqualify. There is no disqualification language within this RFP, and that's very intentional. So we're just scoring it within the scope of the rubric itself, which we're going to get into in a little bit.
What about in a case like that? Couldn't you also be looking at supplement versus supplement?
You could, yes, because you do need to do that as a reviewer, is to make a determination whether the funds are being used in a supplemental fashion. Again, we'll get into that as we move into the budget aspects of these. But to get really specific whether or not technology can be used to implement an AP IB program. So part of this, the activities, the way that they build their programs, they have to adhere to the evidence-based requirements. So the activities all have to be evidence-based in nature. And they have to have strong research behind them, and they need to be able to justify to you that that is the case. And I'm not sure, just because I don't know, I haven't looked, that there's any online AP IB programs that have that evidence behind them as being rigorous college coursework, college level coursework. So again, we would need to look further into the explicit allowable expense behind the technology. Yeah.
It's not specific. If the district or the target school, it would probably be more like middle school, high school.
Yeah, they're usually middle school, high school. So the example that they give in guidance is out in Kentucky, they're starting the programming in middle school and transitioning it up to high school for that rigorous AP IB coursework. And they can include everything from professional development to the courses themselves and the course fee.
Just to say that, I'm sitting here, AP classes, when you take them, that is counted as like your high school English or high school math, but that's not, that becomes not supplemental.
It is supplemental.
They have to have it to graduate.
If it is, the fee itself is supplemental. They don't have to take it. There's another avenue.
So it's just for the fee.
It's just.
So some schools make them, if you take the class, they make you take the test.
So you ready? I'll bring it to you. An LEA may use funds for efforts to raise student academic achievement through accelerated learning programs, including reimbursing low-income students to cover all or part of the cost of AP, IB, or other accelerated learning program exams, and increasing the availability of and enrollment in AP or IB programs, dual or concurrent enrollment programs, early college, high schools, and other accelerated learning options. Because it's not required. So the AP, IB programs are not required to get them to graduate.
I understand that, but when they substitute it for English 12, it becomes.
It's still supplemental. The regular English 12, I see what you're asking. So the regular English 12 class is core instruction.
Yeah.
The AP, IB is an elective. It's supplemental.
So they replace it.
But
They don't have to take
that's,
English 12.
That's fine because we're not having them duplicate. It's almost like the double testing waiver, if you're familiar with the double testing waiver, so kids aren't doing double coursework. It eliminates that, but it's allowable under this funding stream, whereas Title I, it wouldn't be allowable under different funding streams, different rules. Okay. Any other, yeah,
They list their, sources, or the research. We basically have to take that at face value.
right, yeah, so,
Sources.
yeah, so we're taking the applications at face value. We don't need to do any other research behind it. If after today, when you leave here, you want to shred that white paper that I gave you, you want to shred the background information that we gave you in the email for, well, you can do that. You don't have to reference it because you need to take the proposal narrative at face value in comparison to the rubric. And as we move into it, we are going to break the rubric down. So let's see, we have some questions that came in. Hold on, we're coming. All right, so Jen Scully, can the funds be used to pay for a foreign language assessment or just for the purchase of instructional materials? I would think that they would be able to pay for the assessment too if they're paying for the whole program, because it says to support.
What kind of assessment? Yes, that's what the waiver's paid for. Paid for the course fee.
Right, I would believe that they can pay for the assessment.
And it pays, it even pays the old waivers anyway, even paid for, so for instance,
Mary, what waiver are you talking about?
the old waivers that, for the testing fees and the AP and IB and all those things. If you had.
I think she's talking though about the foreign language, arts, music. Jen, am I right that you're talking about the foreign language, arts, music, the improving the access? Oh, she's muted. I thought she would chat, yes or no? Yes, okay. Yeah, so I would think that that would be part of improving their access, because what's the point in giving them the course if they can't take the exam at the end? If we find out any differently, I'll send that out. So just so that you know, our intent is sometime next week, we're gonna have a follow-up Q&A. It's optional if you wanna sit in, if you don't wanna sit in. It'll all be through a WebEx platform. I'll record it, we'll send the link to everybody, but just in case you have lingering questions next week after you start to dissect some of this, I thought it would be helpful and more support to you if we all got around a table and asked the questions, so everybody's hearing everybody else's questions, and we're not fielding 50 of the same question, right? But if you don't have time, because like I said, I know we're all taxed for time, I will record it and archive it, and I will email the link to everybody. And this is also being recorded, archived, and we can email that back out to everybody as well. Any other questions, comments, concerns about well-rounded? Concurrent dual enrollment program is where they would be enrolled in high school and like RPI simultaneously, so they would be doing college level coursework. So it would pay those fees. Yeah?
Those two words mean the same thing, concurrent and dual.
Yeah. All right.
Would that be included in like summer programs too? Sometimes kids can take like a.
I would think so, yeah, because it's improving their access. It's improving their access to advanced placement coursework. So if they do it over the summer, if they do it after school, if they do it during school hours, I would think that it would be included. Any other questions about safe and healthy? No. So what we'll do is we'll take a 10-minute break because I'm going to pass you over to Shannon Logan because she's going to bring you through the effective use of technology piece. We can blow this up for everybody and give you a little bit of background content in this area, and then we'll stop for questions before she leaves so that she can answer all of your pending questions.
And do they have these documents as well?
They do. I emailed them out yesterday. So she sent a table that was included in the package of stuff I emailed out yesterday.
I didn't get that. I mean, see that stuff out yesterday.
So good morning, everybody. I'm Shannon Logan. I manage the EdTech office here at NYSED, and I have to tell you that in the circles that we run in our small little EdTech world, this is a very exciting funding opportunity for schools. In the old legislation, there was a standalone grant, and even though it hadn't been funded in the past few years, EdTech people and practitioners in the field remember this as a really important influx of capital for districts to be able to fund some really innovative stuff in schools. And it goes beyond just bringing computers in and giving kids access to computers, because these days just having the technology, frankly, should be expected in schools, and the technology itself is second to how is the technology being used to really support teaching and learning. And that should be the focus of the programs that you should see. My fingers are crossed that we're going to get some great stuff about personalizing learning with technology, about really using the technology effectively to target specific goals that districts have, and really look for programs that are going to move the school forward in achieving those goals for academic and instructional improvement. So that should be the overarching theme for this. In the legislation, they mentioned that this particular section of the Student Support and Academic Enrichment Grant should focus on personalization of learning and improving digital literacy of students. So when we talk about personalizing learning, really the technology is going to facilitate the teacher, the instructor's ability to make sure that instruction is targeted to the needs of every single individual student that they have in front of them. And we can imagine how great of a resource this would be to teachers when, if you think about a typical middle school or high school, and I'll just take them because I see the most students, but if you have 120 students that you'll see throughout the day, knowing at a moment's notice where these students are, what specific supports they need, if they are advanced, what's the next curricular material you could bring in, if they're struggling in a certain area, what are some resources you could provide for these students to help them improve their skills. And technology is the mechanism that schools are using to facilitate these new initiatives. So this is really, when we talk about personalizing learning, we're targeting learning for the individual students in the schools. Digital literacy, that piece is really improving students' knowledge of how to use technology to create, to communicate, to research, to use it effectively, to use it ethically, to use it responsibly, but to use it in a way that furthers learning. Technology is the tool. The teaching and learning should be the center. So I made out a couple of pieces, and this may be helpful for you. It may not. You may already know this, and I'm sorry if I'm telling you things you already know. But I took down the allowable use of funds section that's in the RFP, and I kind of broke it out into possible activities just so you could get an idea of some of the things that you may see coming from schools and from districts. So for instance, if one of the allowable activities could be the direct services for students. If we're looking at the direct services, this may be something like they're going to pay for an advanced student to take an AP course through a third-party vendor. That could be a direct service for students. Or for online learning experiences like a virtual field trip where a class may not be able to take a real-life field trip to the Kennedy Space Center, but they could connect with them virtually and do a program online that would walk them through some of the STEM concepts and STEAM concepts with a connection to experts in the field, and that's facilitated by online learning. So those may be some of the direct services for students. We know salaries of personnel, that makes sense, but if they're asking for salaries, what I would hope to see is that they're looking for somebody to be working directly with teachers to do some kind of technology integration, professional development, one-on-one coaching model, the ability for teachers to get that direct access to somebody so that they can increase the scope and scale of some of these technology initiatives in their schools. And then as well as possibly to pull out a teacher on special assignment, maybe to give them that TOSA role or the TSA role to either design courses or to work on curriculum maps or something like that, so they can have that experience where they can be paying the personnel to do this, but to have that access to really revamp the curriculum to integrate technology. So those are some ideas of salaries of personnel. And once again, these are not the end-all be-all, but just things that were popping into my head. I skipped professional development. This is going to be huge. We know that in order for initiatives to really take hold in schools, the teachers have to be on board. I'm really hoping we see some fabulous PD proposals from schools and districts. We're looking for effective use of technology. We would like to see that follow models of best practice for PD, and I'm sure that other colleagues are going to talk about that. We want to see things like job embedded, personalized PD to meet the needs of the teachers. You've got your early adopters, they're already using some of these innovative tools. On the other hand, you've got some that are hesitant to use technology. So personalized, meeting the teachers where they are. We want this to be an ongoing professional development model, something that really is less of a sit and get and more of is something that really is incorporating those best practices for adult learning, and maybe involving some kind of professional learning community, maybe an online component. Since we're talking technology, would be nice, but not necessary. But looking for that, and then in the same vein, that's for teachers, but PD for administration as well. You may see some requests for PD to help leadership manage this change in their districts, and that's something that is sorely needed. If there's buy-in at the top, the teachers will follow, and so that's something that you may see as well. And then we may see requests for substitute stipends, for instance, to be able to pull teachers out to flesh out curriculum for digital literacy, to integrate technology into existing curriculum models, building out the maps to include those pieces. So that may be another piece as well. I'm going to tell you that we may see requests for funding to bring in third parties, and I think that that should be something that we consider. There are vendors out there. I'm going to throw the name out, Ed Elements. You may see this name. These are vendors that are already working in some schools and districts to help administration lead changes, lead these innovative programs to personalize learning school-wide, and they're doing amazing things in schools. So that may fall under the PD, it may fall under something else, but this is something that's happening, and I think that we should be on the lookout to support some of these things, especially because I've seen some really, really amazing things turn around, really strong academic improvement results based on this. So things like that you may see as well. And then supplemental resources and equipment. This is where people are traditionally going to see technology falling into. And I want to be careful, and I would want to, if I were reading proposals and I saw that they had a real heavy focus on the technology piece, I would hesitate about that. The technology is the tool to support the teaching and learning. The proposal shouldn't be only about the technology. If we're reading proposals and they say we need to have, X amount of money because we need to buy all these Chromebooks, because everybody says Chromebooks are great and our kids can use Chromebooks and they can use all these apps and it'll be fabulous. If this is not tied to anything, if it's not directly, if they're not building a strong case for this is our specific need, this is why we feel that this technology is going to support the need, this is how we're going to support the teachers as they integrate this, this is how leadership is going to support the teachers, this is how we're going to transform our schools through the use of technology, I'd be real hesitant to score something well that only is tech-focused. There's a lot of companies out there that are hammering districts by this product. And we can see, I'll give you an example, there was a wave of interactive whiteboards put into schools. Schools spent thousands of dollars putting in these interactive whiteboards. You see, and they have, in many cases, turned into glorified chalkboards. Because when you walk into these classrooms, you see that the teacher is at the interactive whiteboard doing a lecture and writing on the board, and the kids are there with their laptops and they're just typing notes on the laptop. Well, there's no use for the technology. Just give them paper. If the instructional practice isn't going to be affected, if it's not going to help facilitate better instructional practice, that's not a program that I would think that we would want to support. We're really looking for things that are going to help kids. And just replacing old instructional methods with new technologies is not going to get us there. So if you see things like, we want to pilot this. New York is real pilot heavy. We've had a lot of pilots over the years. The past 10 years, I can't even numerous pilots, thousands of dollars spent. Let's try this out and see if it works. There's some benefit to that. I can see that there's some benefit to that, but a lot of times they go nowhere. And it's just money wasted, and what do we have to show for it? So if you see pilots, have a critical eye for that. Look to see what is it specifically that they're doing, why are they doing it? Is it built on some, metric of success that another district that has a similar population has experienced, and they're going to try to replicate that, and there's some partnership there, and they're moving forward, and they've got a plan to scale up? Okay, well, maybe they've thought this through, and they're starting small, and they're going to really support it and have those teachers be the advocates and go out and work with other teachers. That may be a model to support. But if they're like, yeah, we're going to ask for money because we want to buy a 3D printer because everybody else has one and we want to try it out. Yeah, they're cool. They're really cool, but what are you going to do with, what are the students actually going to learn from it? Otherwise, it's going to sit in your library media center, and every once in a while, a teacher is going to bring in a class, and they're going to print something out, and they'll be like, oh, this is great, and they'll take it home, and that'll be the end of it. And we want the technology to go to the schools that need it to really drive instructional and academic improvement. So I put a list of some of the things that they're going to ask for on here. One of the things that they're going to look for, again, these are my guesses. This is totally unofficial. This is just some of the thoughts that I had. Digital content. Teachers are bringing more digital content into their classrooms, and it's really tough for teachers to seek out and find quality content online. It takes a lot of their time, and there are companies that curate content already, and it's already tagged for specific reading levels or specific concepts tied to the standards. Some schools need assistance purchasing this to reduce the time that teachers have looking for free stuff. So that could be something that they're looking for. They may look to purchase whole curriculum models. There are learning management systems there where you can bring in an entire course, an online course. It doesn't have to be taught online, but you've got it. You can put it into your online learning management system. The students can have that to work through that. That may be something that they're looking to do as well. We're going to see them wanting to support software and subscriptions they already have. This could be like things, and I don't know, if my son's 5, so I would think about something like Starfall, which is a reading, that kind of a program. They want licenses for the entire school. That may be something that they would want. Another type of software or subscription they may be looking for too is systems that are going to help them maximize their ed tech dollars and their other, dollars for instructional material, and really to improve the return on investment in purchasing. Things like Clarity. Brightbytes has a Clarity system, and it is a survey system that really tries to tell them how well technology is doing in schools, and that kind of program will help them focus initiatives, focus PD, focus spending. That could be a type of thing that they're looking for. There are programs out there that will help analyze the software that they're currently using to see, do we have enough licenses for this software? Are we purchasing too many licenses for this software? Can we kind of switch the money around to make sure we're using our money effectively since there's so little of it? So that could be something else they're doing. It may be for those administrative purposes and not just for direct student use. But you're going to see a lot of people looking to incorporate some of the cool stuff. Augmented reality, virtual reality, this is hot right now in schools. Some schools are doing fabulous things with this. The students are putting on the headsets, and they've got a model of a cell right in front of them, and they're able to pull out, you've got virtual reality dissection going on. You've got virtual reality in the, foreign language environments where students can get practice speaking and listening. There's really amazing stuff. There's also the cool factor that we have to watch out for. I want to buy all of this virtual reality hardware and the connecting software because it can build engagement in school. Engagement is important, but engagement is going to come if the teacher has a really sound instructional methodology and the students see that the teacher is really in there with them. They're not going to be excited just to use the technology as much as we want to think that they are. So look for a strong tie to what the teachers are doing for instruction. And then another thing I wanted to just throw in there is they may, and I'm not quite sure if this is in the budget, in allowable budget category, and I would look, I guess, to Rebecca and to the team, but they may be looking to redesign their learning spaces. So you may see requests for new technologies that that may not be personalized devices for the students. It may be the interactive tables. It may be some tech-ready, we have the Internet of Things now, so we've got furniture and things like that that are conducive to really innovative technology programs. So that may be something out there as well. That's kind of a popular thing right now. So those are just some ideas that I had of some of the things you might see. And then I just gave you some ideas on look for programs and what we would want to see in a good ed tech program, and then things to watch out for. And they aren't necessarily not going to be great. I'm not saying yes, fund these, and no, don't score these well, but just to look for some red flags, some of the things that I would see that may, I would look further into, using the rubric to make sure that they really have a strong case, because we want to fund programs that are going to really move the improvement forward. Technology has a great potential to reduce the digital divide, to reduce equity issues. There's a digital divide in our state. There is a homework gap in our state, and if that term is not familiar to you, the homework gap, and when people refer to homework gap, that's the fact, and this does exist in our state, that the school is heavily wired. We've got great technology, we've got high-speed broadband in the school, the student goes home and they're on dial-up still. And so when we're pushing teachers to do really innovative things, flip your classrooms, do, really heavily tech integrated. We've got all of our lessons online. You can turn your homework in online. We take our quizzes online. The student goes home and they don't have access. I've heard from parents they have to drive their kid 45 minutes to the Dunkin' Donuts so they can sit in the parking lot and complete their homework. So we've got schools that are really facing these issues. They have some really innovative ways to combat this. Some of them are putting Wi-Fi, high-speed Wi-Fi on school buses, so that students with a 45-minute to an hour-long bus ride can finish their homework on the bus as they go home. I mean, there are things out there. Schools are really, really, they may send kids home with a Wi-Fi device, and they may need funding for that. So these are some of the things that they're doing, and I would love to see programs that would reduce some of the inequities that we have here in the state. So that's another piece to look for. And then the last 2 pages that I just put out are just some terms, just in case this may be an area that you don't work with as often. I'm not going to go through them. I know I've thrown out a bunch of them already, but just to, in case you see something and you're looking for a quick, what is that? I thought that might be helpful. So I'm going to stop there. Any questions on technology? Yes.
I'm obviously interested in health ed and Canada. So the areas I'm interested in is finding out if they can fund software or programs that track physical activity and maybe health, pedometers or connectedness to the computer. And saying, and we have a obesity issue. So in supporting their health, is that something that we use?
Absolutely. Wearables are huge. And they can, using that data, they've got all of, they can use that to track their physical fitness. It ties into systems that they have that. That would be an amazing thing that would kind of bleed into some of the other categories, right? We've got the well-rounded school, you know, the safe and healthy schools. You know, that may be something that you're seeing some of those tie-ins, but yeah, absolutely, I would say that should be supported.
We sort of get back to the beginning. So they could buy, let's say, watches, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Could they buy retinol, but on the other hand, physical ed is excluded? You know, where is that line here?
So it's excluded from well-rounded, and it's excluded from safe and healthy schools, yeah. So if the district is conducting a comprehensive needs assessment for technology, and their needs assessment leads to the result that for technology, they need those things to fit within the intent and purpose behind what the constraints are, well, what Shannon just discussed, then yes, it would be an allowable program, but it's got to be justified through their needs assessment. So they have to have the data. So we're going to get into the needs assessment after this, but they have to be able to justify it with their data.
There's only a percentage that you can spend.
Well, so to touch on what Shannon talked about with the furniture and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
there's a 25% cap on infrastructure related to technology, and I believe that furniture would fall into the infrastructure component.
I just had a question, though. When it talks about the effective use of technology, it says it should be to improve instruction and student engagement in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So is it limited to that? Because phys ed and physical health would not be in there, would it, in those 4 categories?
I mean, I read the word including. So if you read that entire section, there's the word including.
Well, I thought the including applied to digital learning technologies and assistive technology. So then it says providing programming to improve. So I don't know what the word including applies.
We'll go back and revisit.
I just wanted to make sure, that's all. I mean, I'm not disagreeing that that's a good idea, but.
Right. We'll go back and revisit the legislation and then the priorities that we were given to see, and we'll come out with a clear answer in the Q&A next week.
Okay.
I just have a quick comment. Paula and I travel across the state and we go to neglected and delinquent facilities, and we have issues, you know, transition to get kids back that doesn't have their science labs and everything, and they had asked about virtual labs. We have gone nonstop in our department trying to find out if we can get virtual labs approved, and our own department is putting up roadblocks to using technology. So it's just something to think about, because we've gone to facilities that purchased 2 different D-Space, and it was phenomenal, and they could actually do the lab on there. We watched the kids maneuver through it, take apart a robotic arm, and you could see all the wires, you could see all this kind of stuff on there. Why we don't let our kids do that, I don't know. But I think if you're at the head of technology.
Not the head of technology, but and you're preaching to the choir. I'm going to say, yeah, absolutely. But you're right. We'll have to work through, yeah.
We have to carry the message, because we're not reaching all kids, and that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to reach all kids. But then, what I was going to ask you is, this grant, if they write the grant, it's only for the schools and the schools within the district. Does it reach to non-public?
It reaches to non-publics. Their equitable sharing is required, equitable participation.
And then the kids that need it the most in the places that we go to,
there's nothing beyond equitable participation with non-public. So it's for public school districts, charter schools, and they have to equitably share with their non-public.
That's what I thought.
That's the way the legislation reads.
But we've seen some phenomenal things across the state in technology that we don't see in our own schools for the kids. And when they get to college, they're not prepared.
She will.
Good. Any more questions for Shannon? Thank you for your time.
Was that helpful? Is that what you needed from me?
Perfect,
Okay,
yeah,
great.
thank you. So again, just to remind you, so the purpose of this is really to expand your thinking so that we, like Shannon said, we can approve those quality applications that come in. Let's see, I'm going to get out of here. You all have this. I emailed that yesterday. What happened? I'm sharing my screen. Let's stop. What happens if I stop sharing? There we are. All right, I'm still recording. Yeah. All right, so now I need the clicker. I like this sitting down. All right, so when the applications come in, as I mentioned, there's the 3 distinct content areas or 3 activity areas, the well-rounded, safe and healthy schools, and now we've gone through the technology. If they are applying for all 3, they have to submit 3 applications. If they are applying for 2, they have to submit 2 applications. If they're only applying for 1, they submit 1 application. So it's up to them on what they choose to apply for. Questions about this? Okay. So now we're going to get into the elements of the proposal.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
So, let's assume the school has 3. Will you make sure that the reader of the application will get them? You know, is it important that we will have them all 3 together, or it really doesn't matter?
No, you're going to be sorted according to buckets. So some of you will be reviewing well-rounded, others will be reviewing safe and healthy, others will be reviewing technology. So you won't get applications from all 3 areas. You'll be given one specific bucket. So that, because what happens then is you're focused in on that area and your reliability goes up. Yes, Mary?
Do you have a check before they go out that there's no duplication on the, like an LEA is trying to submit individually and trying to...
Yeah, that's all part of our intake. Yep, that's all part of intake. Okay, so the elements of the proposal, there's requirements on how they are to submit. The narrative is limited to 25 pages with a 12-point font, Arial font, okay? So if you find the font size is too small, call one of us and we will tell you what to do with that. If your application is more than 25 pages, do not review anything past the 25-page mark, okay? And then they're limited to 3 pages for the budget narrative.
So don't pay attention to anything beyond 3 pages.
Don't, for the budget narrative, no, nothing beyond 3 pages. So if they submit attachments in addition to the narrative, that counts for the 25-page limit. It counts for the 3-page limit, and they're aware of this. This was clarified in the FAQ.
So the 3 pages are not part of the 25-page one?
Right.
Will we be reviewing electronic copies or?
No, you'll have hard copies. The only people that will have electronic copies are people that are remote. I believe we'll get them an emailed copy. I don't believe we're going to mail them because we need to move back with speed. So
I'm thinking about all this text and technology. Sometimes if you have a lot to read, but I'll ask you if I can't, if I'm having trouble reading.
okay. All right. Any other questions about this piece? No? All right. So the proposal part is broken up into 3 distinct sections. It starts with Section A, which includes the background information, the needs assessment, and the project objectives. They can receive a total of 30 points within Section A. And the overarching purpose of Section A is to completely detail, you know, the data the district is using to define themselves, to give you a picture of what they look like. That should be pretty clear. The grade stands, the scope, the size, the teaching staff, whatever they can give to you to let you know what the district demographics look like. What do the populations look like? What do their poverty levels look like? The more detailed they are, the better picture you will have. The comprehensive needs assessment, we're going to get into in a little bit more detail as we move through the presentation. This needs to be a review of their data for whatever content area they're applying for. They should be able to clearly identify the gaps in which their data is showing and articulate to you why they need to do what they want to do. A demonstration of program management and organizational capacity. They should be able to clearly depict that they have the capacity to take on the program that they want to implement, and that they have the organizational structure to be able to do so. And the summary of stakeholder involvement. They're required to engage in consultation with all stakeholders, which includes students, staff, parents, community members, institutes of higher education. If they have Indian tribes, and they should also be able to demonstrate to you that they have engaged with the appropriate stakeholders. Questions, comments, concerns?
We would have no way of knowing if they left it out because we don't know if they have Indian tribes in the district.
Right. So you won't really know if they left it out. Again, we take it at face value that they've done their due diligence, because at the end of the day, they're attesting to and signing that they are not committing any sort of fraud and that they have engaged the appropriate stakeholders.
What if you do know? Like, what if I know that part of the Onondaga Nation, like, falls in their catchment base?
Right.
Cuts off that bottom.
We're laughing. We know who you're talking about. So if they leave them out, right, you're going to score them appropriately. There's a unique indicator on the scoring rubric related to consultation.
Okay.
So if you know, because that's part of your scope of reference, that they have left them out, then you need to reflect that in their score. And you can just justify it, saying, I'm familiar with the district. I know you have not consulted with the Onondaga Nation.
So don't go on a fishing expedition, but if you know.
Right. We don't want you to do any extra work. So, no, you're not fishing. You don't need to search. You don't need to look. But, like, for us in Title I, consultations are a regular thing. And if you have a district that you're familiar with, you're probably going to know that they've engaged with the regular stakeholders. If you're not familiar, don't go looking. You don't need to look at their app to see that they've engaged with stakeholders in any way, shape, or form. Okay. All right, section B is the project design. This is where they're going to get into their goals, their objectives, their action steps, you know, their plan for implementation, and then their plan for sustainability. And this is the meat of the proposal. So it's worth 50 points.
And the 25-page limit is for A plus B?
Yes, A plus B, 25-page limit. And any attachments included, yep. And then C is the budget. So this is twofold. They have to provide the budget narrative that aligns with the project goals and objectives, and then they also have to be able to justify all of the expenses and submit the completed FS10. Yes,
all right, it's very conceivable that many of these districts, especially if you've got 1,000 patients, will have the same score. I mean,
we'll take care of
75, 100.
Right, we'll take care of the scoring. All you have to do is generate the score, okay? So all you're doing is generating a score. We will take care of the ranking of the scores. We will take care of any ties. We will take care of the way that the funding goes out. So all you're doing, the one thing that you cannot do is you cannot compare application A to application B and score it that way.
Right.
They need to be scored independently of one another, so keep that in mind.
Is there a minimum page for the narrative? It says no more, right? There's nothing? Okay.
No, they can give you one page.
Okay. As long as they have all the information, right. Okay.
They can give you a page.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll get, as we're talking about the rubric and how breaking it down by sections, I think you're going to see that, you know, that application would be handled a certain way.
Okay.
Which you probably score that down because they haven't gone into the depth.
The depth of what the rubric
But that's a good question.
Yeah, okay.
If the budget exceeds 3 pages, what do we do?
Only review the first 3 pages, the budget narrative. So you're going to score it based on the first 3 pages. So we're going to break the rubric down for you. And if you know, 3 codes are on pages 5 and 6, 4, 5, and 6, then they aren't going to get it reviewed. And then you need to make the determination in your scoring, based on those first 3 pages, are they demonstrating that they've budgeted appropriately to implement the program design that they've conveyed in the narrative? Does that make sense?
What if the budget's really well written and it exceeds 3 pages?
Doesn't matter. The budget narrative? Right, the budget narrative. The budget narrative, so the FS10 is separate. The budget narrative is limited to 3 pages. They should be able to tell you what they want to do within 3 pages. Because we're only talking about a maximum of $8 million. That's the cap. That's all that the big districts can receive. So they should be able to define $8 million in a 3-page limit. They do it all the time in Title I. I mean, we have budget narratives that are a page, you know, for $100 million. So.
So, Martha, if this is the first time we're reviewing all of this, I know you can't compare the 2 applications, but obviously you're gonna, first one, you don't have any frame of reference for, you know, you'll try to have your frame of reference for quality based on rubric, but if you realize, like, going into the second or third one, you kind of like either over, you know, giving them too much credit, it's really not as detailed as you thought, or, you know, it really isn't as, so can you?
So that is a good question. So this is a competitive grant, and you're not to rescore or go back and re-review. You need to send us your scores after you complete the review, immediately after you complete the review. So there's no option to go back and rescore.
Okay.
So you just need to do your due diligence within the frame of the scoring rubric. If you have any questions as you're going through that first one, you can call myself, Andy, or Audrey, and we will help guide you to the best that we can. But that's the way that it has to be because of contract rules. Yeah, we're not allowed to go back.
Yeah. Just take your time with the first few and really try hard. Okay, I get it.
I found when I'm not familiar with the topic area, if I read 1 or 2 of them before I start scoring them, you kind of know what you want to zoom in on. You're not really comparing them to each other, but you become a little bit familiar with it. Is that really not allowed?
You're not supposed to, no. It's supposed to be a 1 dry read. So that's why we did the effort of trying to build your background a little bit this morning, to give you that frame of reference so that you can go through and to do it. So the safeguard to that is if there's a discrepancy of 15 points or more, it has to be read by a 3rd reviewer and then scored. And that 3rd review won't take place until the 4th week of this process. So it's not scheduled to take place until the 4th week of this process. So that will kind of account for some of that. So if you read application A first and you're really tough and you score them at a 50, which they wouldn't get funded anyway, but then your partner reads it last in their bucket of work, and by that time they're on autopilot and they score it at a 95, well, there's a huge discrepancy right there in the calibration, and we need to figure out why it needs to go through a 3rd review.
Is there a cutoff for what passes?
I believe 65 is the standard cutoff. 65 is the standard cutoff.
Do you know if you'll be assigning readers scores all of their applications at one point in time, or will you be sequencing them?
They're most likely going to come all at one time. We're going to take a week to intake and log them and sort them, and you'll get them all at one time.
So I'm not aware that Congress has a problem if you, let's say you get A, B, and C to read and score. If you read all the A's through all your applications, then you read all section B through your application. I'm not aware that there's an issue or problem with that.
I would have to check with Jessica. She's our point of contact in contracts. So I will confirm that with her, and then I will get back to you. Okay? All right. Any other questions? You are now the host of this meeting. Okay. All right, when will we begin reading? When will we need to finish? Jen, that's a good question. So, applications, we're hoping to have to you by February 26th. You'll have 3 weeks to review and score. I think that brings us to March. I think it's the week before that, right? Because our final process has to be done by like March 23rd. So whatever the week before March 23rd is when you have to finish. It's in the PowerPoint. Friday the 16th. And I have the timeline detailed for you at the end of the presentation. Yes, Mary?
Cutoff 60 points.
60 points. All right, so the cutoff is 60.
How many applicants are we likely to get per person?
So we're hopeful that what we negotiated, what OSC would prefer is that every reviewer read between 50 and 100 applications. We negotiated down.
Is that big nuts or what?
We negotiated down to 15 to 25. We're hoping 25 will be the cap.
Per reviewer?
Per reviewer.
And what is the average time, do you think, one should?
I don't know. I hesitate to say because it depends on, I think a lot of things come into play. So your background knowledge. So if it happens to be an area that you're very well versed in, you're probably going to move at a little bit more of a speed. The beginning ones are going to take a little bit longer because the more that you do, the quicker that you get, the more that the key things you know to look for. Maybe 2 to 3 hours. But that's just a guess. I don't know. Yeah, it's going to depend on the quality in which it's written. If it's written really well, that's going to make it a little bit easier. If it's organized, you know, they've really highlighted the section numbers, that's going to make it a little bit easier. If you have to jump around and find, well, where are they talking about A, where are they talking, that's going to make it a little bit more challenging. So there's a lot of little nuances that are going to impact the review.
And that brings up a question, if they put if stuff is there but it's not in the right order, that doesn't impact their score, right?
No, because the order was clarified in the FAQ because it was inconsistent with in the RFP. So the order is not going to impact their score, but they have to have all of the components within the scoring rubric there, okay?
We have to be 16 to 25.
Is there a review timeline, so the reviews will start, you have it sort of?
There's a timeline built into the end of the presentation that we're going to get to.
Okay, thanks.
There we go. All right, so really quickly, the strategic cycle that anything typically follows is needs assessment, project design, budget. A lot of our districts are used to thinking in the terms of, well, we have this money, what can we do with it? Oh, let's buy this, right? So over the past several years, we've been trying to change their frame of thinking to say, what are our needs, what are our gaps? How do we address those needs? How do we address those gaps? And then how do we fund that good stuff that we want to do? And this process follows that same thinking because applicants have to do a comprehensive needs assessment. They have to do an analysis of their district data. They have to identify those gaps, and they have to justify the work ahead. And they should be able to convey that to you in your proposal, in the proposal that they provide. The project, yep.
Is every district using the same needs assessment, or is it?
There's no uniform format. They are free to use whatever they want to use. A lot of districts wrote in asking if they could use their DTSBE review, and they can do that as long as it fits within the context of the content area in the grant. So that's where we have left that. So they can convey this to you however they want to, but they need to be able to demonstrate that they've done a review and analysis of their data and they've identified those gaps.
Does the needs assessment need to help them determine which of the three areas, you know, safe and healthy schools, well-rounded technology? Or can they decide to just do a needs assessment to determine what area, like, for example, within technology we want to pursue?
That does make sense, and that question came in, and because of the time frame in which this was rolling out, we didn't force them into doing a needs assessment for all three areas. And we left it up to them on how they were going to justify the proposal, which may be a little bit contradictory to the guidance that came out, but.
So in other words, they can pick the area, then do the needs assessment just on that topic, that.
Yeah.
Question just came up.
Oh, it did.
Can the needs assessment be as simple as a focus group or a survey monkey?
I think that it probably could. It could be.
For me, the first thing that just jumped into my head is the word comprehensive. So
Yeah.
a comprehensive needs assessment, and I'm just doing a survey monkey because that's kind of quick and easy, and gets me some data, which is not to say it's not a good thing. But it may not be as comprehensive as I would like as a reviewer, and when I'm looking at the rubric, there's language that kind of leads me in a certain direction. So I may not score that as much as I would score another one.
Right. So a survey monkey, the data is that you're going to get is really observational. It's anecdotal. It's not really clear, black and white, concrete data. I would think a comprehensive needs assessment would have, you know, both qualitative and quantitative data to support the program, and I'm not sure that you can get that from just that single source. You probably have to use multiple sources to get at the data, to get at the need.
What would be an example that would be better for quantitative needs assessment?
I would say your student academic achievement data.
Existing data that goes to the state.
It could be that goes to the state. A lot of our districts collect a plethora of data across all different areas. So for safe and healthy schools, it might be any discipline data, referral data, suspension rate data.
So they're really not gathering new data, they're analyzing the data they have.
That would be, well, we didn't tell them they had to do that. We didn't tell them that they could, you know, we didn't clearly state, use your existing data or collect new data. We left the flexibility up to them, but we told them they could use existing data.
Okay.
And because of the time frame in which this is rolling at, the smart thing to do would be to use that existing data because it's at their fingertips. And most districts at this point in time have data teams that are looking at it pretty regularly. Well, we would hope that they have data teams. Yeah, so they should have it. Yep.
I've done some competitive RFPs with comprehensive needs assessment before, and one of the red flags for me is always been they'll mention some hard research and some hard data, and they'll say our population fits this particular scenario. But it's not their research, it's not their comprehensive needs assessment, and I don't usually give them brownie points for that.
Right, and that's right on, Leon. So the data should be their own. They need to have ownership over that data. They can't try to retrofit into existing, to generalizing existing research. The only time they can do that as part of this process, they have to have evidence-based activities. So when they start building out their program with activities, then they can say maybe our population fits the research behind this action, but not for conducting the needs assessment.
Sometimes too, in terms of the district providing data that they've used, sometimes I find it not to be as current enough. Like if it's 12 years ago, and they're citing the data source that was done. It's kind of because this says current.
Right.
So within reason, 5 years.
And that's what we told them about their DTSCE reviews as well, because if they haven't had an IIT review in several years, how current is that report? So it needs to be current. I would say at least within the last 2. I would say as current. I would say 3 is probably too long.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Yep, I would say that 3 is probably, is probably too long.
Okay.
All right.
We need to know what that is.
But right.
The DTS.
So if you're saying.
Oh, so for those of you not familiar with the DTSBE reviews, the DTSBE is the comprehensive rubric that we use for our schools and districts and accountability. It's the rubric that they're all using to do a comprehensive needs assessment. We have an IIT review team that goes out, they review the district, and then generate a report from there. Yep. Integrated intervention team.
So if data is older than 2 years, they will lose points?
That's the determination.
Yeah. No, so you need to make the determination as to.
Well, you just said it.
Well, I would say, from my perspective, from my lens, because I work with strategic planning with schools and districts all the time.
We should agree on that.
Right.
And
Yeah,
I
'cause
think
that'll
2 years is not too old.
Yeah.
If you think it is, or 4, shouldn't we agree on that?
It depends on the data that you're talking about. It also depends on the scope of the reviewer. I would hesitate to put a fine line on that. From my perspective, because I work with school improvement, for me, 2 years is too old. Laura may disagree with me. She also works in school improvement, but she may say, 5 years, but it's all up to the way that you review. So you all define current as you review your application.
And it depends on the type of proposal that they're writing.
Yeah.
It really does.
Also, if we're not explicit in direction,
Right.
we can't hold something against them that we haven't been explicit about.
Right, the rubric just said current, and we clarified it in the FAQ as just saying current.
That doesn't, so we can't really hold them to a
current
specific
is fine.
standard.
Right.
So I can we can't really hold them to.
So Mary,
But we can't go fish either.
the grant was posted December 16th? December 21st. And it's due February 16th. Okay. All right, so now we get in from the comprehensive needs assessment is going to drive the project design. So out of that needs assessment, they're going to tell you what gaps they realize they have. When we say gaps, so when they tell you needs assessment, state your needs, this is not I need this. This is I need to do this because my student data is showing this, right? So that is really a need. The need is the gap. What's not happening? What's not happening because you don't have all of this awesome technology in your building and that you need the technology in your building. So that's a true need, is what is not happening. And that's going to drive the project design, where they're going to tell you why they need all of this awesome stuff to fill that gap. And what we need to be mindful of is that, so they have goals, but there are really outcome measures attached to those goals. So the goal itself should address the gap in some way, shape, or form. And then there needs to be a clear, measurable outcome attached to that. So when I say clear, measurable outcome, it's something that can be measured at the end of the completion of the work. Does that make sense?
So can you give them an example of they're going to buy this stuff, and then what will be the outcome?
Right, so, why do you have to do that? So I can give you a clear example of a measurable goal. Can I just do that off the top of my head? So by June of 2018, we'll do stuff. Virtual reality systems will be in place to better support student learning in science, as evidenced by a 10% increase in student academic achievement on their science assessment. 10% increase would be the clear measure aligned to the implementation of the virtual reality.
But wouldn't they have to have given you what the base is?
That's going to be in the need.
Okay.
They're going to convey that in the need.
So you can know they've reached it or not.
Right. So they're going to convey that in the need. The goal is going to tell you the intended impact at the end of all of the work. The project design is going to get you there. So need,
project design, all of the activities, actions, get you to an intended impact at the end of the work, 10% increase in academic achievement in science.
So they have to quantify, you're looking for quantification.
Measurable outcomes.
Yeah, but we have
Yeah,
to be
Jennifer.
mindful, this is of course an aspirational thing, right? If they say 10% increase in some component measurement outcome, ideally, yes, but we have to be mindful. Some school may say 5, which may be more realistic, and others says 15.
Yeah.
Maybe to grant us or even.
Right, I just use that as an example off the top of my head. So
Right.
yes, it can be any range. A lot of times we encourage them to pick ranges, 5 to 15%, so that they have a moving target. Because at the end of the day, what we've always told them is we don't really care if you hit your target, but you know why or why not, why you haven't hit your target. But at the end of the day, we have to report to USDE if they've hit their targets and why not they haven't hit their targets.
That'll be in the final report.
That's going to be in the final report, and that's what we have to report up to USDE. So the number, the outcome that they pick needs to be realistic in terms of the need they've identified. But we don't want to always see, our districts are great at developing process measures. We want outcome measures. So we don't want numbers of people attending PD.
Right.
We want what is the outcome or the intended impact from that PD.
On student learning. Right.
It could be on student learning, or it can be on a change in teacher practice.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's hard to measure.
Which is hard to measure, but now with all of the good rubrics that we have, it's easier to measure than it's ever been. Yeah, thank you. So that's the frame of thinking that we want is the process measures are great, but we want those real hard outcome measures. We want the work to be meaningful. We want it to be impactful. And at the end of the day, we want it to impact student learning. Okay. So these here. Visits, thanks. Oh yeah, she's just going to share something. And then the last piece is the budget, which should be driven and aligned to all of these things. So the budget should clearly convey how they're going to fund the project design. And that's really their justification. They have to justify within the budget narrative, but they should pull, it should be a direct alignment to their proposal. Questions, comments, concerns?
With the reasonable and necessary, it cannot just be a single statement that blankets. You don't need for each item. Or do you need for each item to be, for them to justify that it's reasonable and necessary?
No, they don't.
Just be a blanket
because
statement?
I don't see them, I don't see them even explicitly saying that this is reasonable and necessary.
In the UPK grants, they do.
Do they?
They'll just say, oh, and by the way, I know you need us to say if this is reasonable and necessary, so it is. Yeah, I'm not. And then sometimes they don't say it at all, and then we have to deduct points.
I'm not sure no, we're not going to deduct points if they don't say it.
Okay.
We need to make the determination that the expenses are reasonable and necessary in the scope of the work.
So they don't need to say it.
No,
Okay.
no, they don't need to say it.
Okay.
We need to make that determination based on the scope of the proposal they give to you.
Okay.
So do their expenses seem reasonable? So for example, if their demographics, they have, 100 students, that's it, whole district, 100 students, but they want to buy 5,000 virtual reality headsets. That's not reasonable nor necessary, and I'm sure they probably haven't justified it appropriately, and you'll score the budget accordingly. So, it needs to fit within the spirit of the law, and the reasonable and necessary clause prevents them from supplanting. Yeah, it couples with that.
Erica, you were kind of referring to some of the ESSA language. Was that in any of the documents that you sent to us?
So it's in the RFP, but I will send you the guidance after this training. There's a clear guidance that goes with Title IV. I can send that to you. It gives some examples of what LEAs do within, foreign language and all of.
Yeah.
It also gives you I would be mindful though, because it gives you the other pieces that are eliminated out by the department. It's a one comprehensive.
Can I just add to that? When you're looking at the guidance, one thing to keep in mind is that there were 2 or actually 3 ways to go about this funding. It could have just been allocational, it could be competitive, or it could be a combination of the two. So when you're reading it, you have to be very careful that what you're reading actually pertains to the competitive part of it and not one of the other areas, because it changes. It's not consistent.
And the guidance is very general in nature. It really follows more of the allocational language than the competitive language, because there's restrictions when you go competitive, but then there's also flexibilities when you go competitive.
Maybe we can extract just those full pages and ones that you'll need and eliminate some of the nitty-gritty.
Right.
Because it does get too much in the weeds for review.
Good idea.
Yes.
All right, so the budget and this grant proposal that any LEA submitting or consortium must be fully supported by their budget. They can't pull in any other funds.
No, they can leverage. They can coordinate. They can leverage. They can do whatever they want with any other fund sources. So if they have an existing technology program that's running through a technology grant they have through us already, and they want to expand to that work, they can leverage this fund source to try to expand to that work.
So what they should be explaining is the expansion. That's what our.
If that's what their proposal alludes
That's
to.
what their needs show, they're designing around, their description.
Right. Yep.
That would be the sustainable part, right?
Sustainability is going to explain how they're going to continue this work after the end of the grant period. So the project period is set to run from July 1st, 2018 through September of 2019, and there is no carryover. So they need to explain how they sustain beyond that September window.
And when you say sustainability, that should include how they're going to finance it, correct?
Well, I would assume so, yeah.
Could you repeat the project?
July 1, 2018 through September of 2019.
Okay. And if we get one that has the wrong project period, if it's like on one fiscal year, for example,
We'll take care of it, yeah. Those we can just fix the project periods. That's not an issue.
So if they're coordinating, if they're coordinating funds, they're supposed to give us all of the pieces so that we don't just think they want a bunch of materials when they have a professional development piece here, training or some other things going on.
If their intent and purpose is to leverage funds and coordinate other funds, that should be clearly conveyed. So you need to have a full picture, right? So the needs should be clearly conveyed, the proposal should be clearly conveyed, the budget should justify all of that stuff, right?
That should be 25 pages, they should be able to tell us.
Erica, out of curiosity, so what if they did one for the social emotional, and then they did one for the technology, and they're thinking that those two, and one is impinging on the other? What if they didn't get this one and this one's based on?
They should convey that. They are all fully aware that each application is distinct and is going to be reviewed independently of one another. That was made clear in the FAQ. All right. Well, they should, if they read the FAQ, all 46 pages of it, 183 questions.
Yeah, that's how I spend my day at home. Real nice reading.
All right, so there were several attachments within the RFP. I did not print them out. You all have the RFP. I gave it to you. Some of them are required. Some of them are only required for some people, and some of them are optional, okay? So attachment, we did this by table. Attachment number, and was it a requirement for a submission? You'll also see this in the FAQ. So attachment 1, which is the cover page, for individual applicants only. That's the individual applicant cover page. 1A is the cover page for consortium applicants, so 2 separate ones. So they're going with one or the other. Attachment 2 was yes for consortium members only. Nobody else has to submit that. Attachment 3 was a yes for all applicants. Attachment 4 was optional. I don't remember what that was. Attachment 5 was a yes for all applicants. 5A was the equitable participation. That was yes for all public school districts. And attachment 6 was optional. So there were 2 optional attachments, and those were 4 and 6. These do not count as part of the 25-page limit. So earlier when I referenced attachments, is if they choose to include charts, graphs, you know, fancy stuff, these do not count as part of the 25-page limit.
Charters are included in public schools, correct?
Yeah, charters are included as part of public schools. So if it's,
Charters is 5A?
no, because charters do not have to comply with equitable participation.
Got it, okay.
Equitable participation is for only public school districts.
Now I got it.
Yeah.
Wait, can you say that one
So, so under federal funding, charters are deemed to be their own LEAs. So they would be their own eligible applicant under this grant funding. However, charters do not have to comply with equitable participation, which is sharing with non-public schools, which public school districts do have to share their grant funds with non-public schools. In-district non-public schools.
They have to provide services.
Yeah.
We never provide funds for private schools.
Thank you.
Public schools have to provide services to private schools.
Yeah.
I noticed a lot of charter schools ask a lot of questions, and I'm like, okay, it looks like we're getting a lot of charter schools. And one interesting question where I didn't really understand completely the answer was the data that they have to provide, is it specific to the charter school or is it specific to the district that it's in?
So they would provide their charter data.
So just the students within that school, they
Right.
don't have to expand out like.
No,
for
because
charter
the
schools
districts
only.
don't, no, the
Okay.
districts do, because that's their demographic. And their
Right.
demographic doesn't include the students in Albany. Yeah.
So,
What about that situation when you said there was a district that would partner with the county?
Yep, so,
Would they have to?
so district, if they're applying as a consortium, district with charter school, they have to give you all of the all of the data for the entire consortium.
You check for the attachments, we don't have to worry about that part.
Yes, we will check for the attachments on intake.
Right, so that's part of that pre-screening process?
It is, but some of the attachments you will need to look at in scoring. Okay?
Does it disqualify them if they leave out a necessary attachment? No.
Nope. Yes.
I might be a little confused on this, but 5A, if you have a district and a charter school and a consortium, do they fill that out?
The district will have to fill that out.
Would have to provide for their part.
Right, yeah. So in that instance, so if the district would have to do it for all district applicants within that consortium. Charter schools, they don't have to, because the district is already equitably sharing with those non-publics within the district. It would be like double dipping for the non-public, so. Yes, Leon?
Clarification on the numbers, as I read the FAQ yesterday. The question was asked several times, and I'm sorry for my thickness, but private schools in the district who don't want anything to do with the application. It sounded like that in terms of counting up to how much money a district can get, they still count the enrollment on that private school?
Yes.
Why?
Because that's the way that the legislation is written.
They're just declining the services, not,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, if they're declining, so it's the same way as Title I works. If they're declining services, they're declining services, but they're still counted in determining the per pupil.
It's a different kind of grant.
But it still follows the same equitable participation clause that 81, whatever it is, 8104, 8106. It's the same one that Title I, Title II, Title IV, Title VI reference. 81 something, 06, 04, 01. 81 something.
8501 and 8504.
All right. So the project funding, this is really, really important.
I found it.
Okay? All you need to worry about is the table. This is all that you need to worry about. So if they have less than 1,000 students, they can apply for a cumulative maximum award of $250,000. Actually, you don't need to worry about that. No, you don't really need to worry about that at all. We can worry about that. But that is what they're allowed to apply for. The $250 per pupil was used as a baseline to determine the upper ends of the table. So all we're worrying about is the table. So New York City can only apply for up to $8 million. So if they submit 3 applications, they can only total $8 million.
All three have to be under that cap.
What?
Correct. So if New York City does apply to 3. So if that 8 million divided among 3.
That's right.
Not 8.
Right. Correct.
Anything with the state at 2 would be 4 and 4.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And that's part of the preliminary check for
Yeah.
the application.
Or it could be they submitted 1 application for the top end amount. Okay.
And DOE is applying as one district.
1 LEA, 3 applications.
This is pre-screening.
Yeah.
So we.
Well, and we'll take care of it on the back. It's really more post-screening, once you get awarded, once we figured out how they score. I mean, if you're evaluating a budget and they have applied for more than they're eligible for, then they can't be given full points.
So how are we going to know that?
I would say when you're reviewing, you're just ensuring that if you're reviewing a well-rounded application from New York City, you're ensuring that they didn't exceed 8 million.
Right.
Right, but if it's less than that.
You are going to know because in their needs assessment, they're going to give you their district data. They should tell you
how many.
They should tell you the enrollment population with what the grant is working with.
For their district and any if it's a
applicant.
consortium and
Yep.
also for the non-pub.
Yep.
So all that, those numbers
That
will
should be
combine.
in there
I'm
somewhere.
gonna know all their buckets.
And you should.
Okay, so
Well, you-
if my bucket is at.
No, you wouldn't.
No.
You might only have one bucket.
So if I'm doing, that's what I'm saying, so if I'm
Yeah.
doing 1 bucket.
Right.
And New York City, since you're using New York City and they're applying.
Right.
How am I gonna know, for example, let's say it's a technology bucket, and their max is $8 million for all 3.
Right.
Let's say they apply for all 3. They're, applying for $6 million, so that means that they only have $2 million left for the other 2 buckets. How do I know, for example, the difference between knowing if they apply, let's say they applied for $8 million and they actually, in the other 3 buckets, the other 2 buckets did, $1 million and another $1 million. So then they've exceeded their limit.
You wouldn't know that.
Huh?
You've already graded them.
Well, I've already graded them.
And you wouldn't know that ahead of time.
They've done the right thing.
So we can let you know ahead of time.
Okay.
We can let you know.
Well,
We can let you know ahead of time. Ahead of time. In the event that we get like 2,800 applications, and for some reason we can't get to that level of detail and let you know ahead of time, we will take care of it on the back end.
Another way to approach it as well. When they submit their entire application, there's a cover sheet that says, this is the school and this is how much money we're applying for. So I know that according to them, this is what they're applying for. I'm going to do my application blind based on that amount and make sure the budget amounts, the narrative, and can match that and don't exceed it. So that keeps me in the zone of just the 1 application.
Right.
And then I guess we'll worry about that.
We'll worry about it. Yeah, like if New York City submits all 3 and they exceed 8 million, you're not gonna know.
Right.
If you're just scoring and well-rounded, you just have to ensure that they're well-rounded, didn't exceed their allotted 8 million. And the cover sheet will tell you their enrollment count and how much they're.
So in essence, my question is, we're not responsible for making the determination if they reach the max.
Right.
Only if it's clear. So only if you have the application for New York City and your application is for $10 million. You'll know,
Well, back, I'm gonna know because they can't reach.
Right.
What I'm saying is, if they go 7 million, I'm not gonna have to
Only
worry about
if
whether
it's
or not.
clear. So only if it's extremely clear that has happened, you wouldn't be able to score them appropriately.
So what does the scorer do in that instance when it's clear within a single application that they've exceeded their maximum? Do you score the whole thing?
Yes, you would still score it within the constraints of the scoring rubric, and we're going to break the scoring rubric down next to let you know how that's going to work.
So we're going to just be see budget narrative, not budget?
You're gonna see the FS10, you're gonna see the budget.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so if the budget total is $8,010, we'll
Right.
see that can match the cover and say something.
Right, and the narrative should also match the FS10. You have to check for that the narrative matches the FS10. The numbers match between the narrative and the FS10.
Conversely, there's a minimum involved here too. Will the score be responsible for making sure they meet the minimum?
No. There's a minimum of $100,000 per application. No, we don't want you to worry about the minimum. Okay? I know, John, I just confused you. I see the wheels turning. All right, so the budget reviews, a couple of things you want to keep in mind. Make sure that you look for any math errors between the FS10, the budget narrative, the budget summary. You want to see the costs broken down by expense. This is a new slide, yeah. This was added after I sent this to you, okay?
And you're gonna send us the new one.
I can send you the new one, yeah. Yep. You want to make sure things match, that whatever is on the budget narrative appears on the FS10, whatever is on the FS10 appears in the budget narrative, and that the expenses are aligned to the program objectives and goals. Because again, we want them to build a program and then figure out how to fund it.
Again, I have to ask,
Yep.
just because of how calibrated in UPK, is that a judgment call, or is that explicit language, alignment of expense to program goals and objectives?
I gotta check the rubric. Is that explicit? Where's the rubric down? It's in the folder.
I believe it, I believe so.
Yeah, they have to propose, yeah. It's illustrated how the proposed expenditures align with proposal activities, why the costs are reasonable and necessary to support. You're scoring them on that. I'll call that on it.
Okay, so they have to explicitly explain.
Yeah.
No.
It's part of their narrative.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they don't, they just get the cost.
No, they have to justify.
No, they have to justify all of their expenses within this grant. Other questions, comments, concerns? So some of the allowable expenditures, this was embedded within the RFP. Again, they have to be necessary and reasonable. They have to be permissible under state finance rules, federal finance rules. They have to conform to all of the limitations within the RFP. So if you notice, there is a 2% administrative cap in there. If they're applying for technology, there's a 25% limit on infrastructure. So those pieces, they have to conform to them. Let's see. And again, they can't supplant, it can't be included in the cost of any other grant proposal. Some may, everyday unallowables, food, refreshments, any planning or writing of the grant prior to the expense. So they can't contract with BOCES for writing this grant. Can't happen, done beforehand. And again, major remodeling, incentives of any kind, purchases of vehicles or facilities, those are all pretty typical no-no-nos. And again, at the end of the day, after we figure out who the awardees are, we'll take a look through on the back end and make the final determination that the budget is allowable, unallowable, and we'll cut expenses as needed. Yep.
So you just mentioned BOCES, but I thought they can be vendors.
They can be a vendor, but they can't contract with them to write the grant proposal.
And they can't run a consortium, they can't.
Right, and they can't be the lead applicant on a consortium. Because the grant proposal is due before the funding period begins. The funding period doesn't begin until July, so expenses can't be prior to July 1.
So the scorer is responsible for looking at that 15% minimum for consortium?
The lead applicant, so you need to make a determination that the lead applicant is using 15% for their own activities, because otherwise they're just serving as a flow-through to everybody else.
In the scorer's opinion, they've exceeded the 25% for infrastructure, or they haven't met the 15% for consortium non-flow-through. Do you score it in that way, or do you not score it?
I would score it in that way, and just let Andy, Audrey, and I know that that's the case, because if they do get awarded, we will reduce the budget in those expense areas so they haven't exceeded the cap. So they haven't exceeded the 2% for admin, or that, so that they meet that 15%. We can work with them to meet that 15% for their own activities. So in the event that they do get funded, and with the amount of applications that are coming in, I don't know if they would get funded. Yes, ma'am.
That's 15%.
Yeah.
Consortium lead is usually that 15% amount. Who provides services to the consortium members? Does that count toward that 15%?
It has to be direct services, from what I remember.
No, they are. They're providing direct service to the consortium members. Does that count for their 15%?
I thought it had to be their direct
doing the
services.
same kind of thing that this.
Right, for themselves. Hold on. I have the.
Only their own district.
Right, only their own districts. Let me double check the language since I have it here. But I'm almost certain that it was.
Because often in consortium leads often provide
Oh,
services.
maybe did I not forget, where is it?
Consortium members.
This one? Uh-oh. What happened to my file?
Here's.
Oh, can't open PDF, okay? Well, that stinks. Leanne, I'll have to look back into that.
You can open it and share your screen.
Yeah, that's the way around.
So if I share my screen, right?
Minimum level of direct service of 15%.
Right.
Provided by the lead fiscal agent. Services provided by partners or vendors of the lead fiscal agent may not be applied to the 15 minimum.
And it's direct service to the students, not to the consortium members.
That's how I would interpret it, but let us double check and we'll clarify that through email.
How process, so we score, if they can, even if they have, like they've exceeded, will we put the note in the justification for the score?
Yeah, it'll be part of your justification, and then just make sure that you let myself, Andy, or Audrey know, so that we know to pull it in case they rank high. We can put a note on it or something, so then when we rank them, then we can reduce their budget accordingly.
But that's, we aren't actually giving them a lower score because they exceeded the 15%, right? That's not in the.
Exceeded it or went below?
Exceeded it. Where would that
They have a minimum of 15%. You can exceed it.
Oh, I mean, if they go under, is there somewhere in the rubric that if they went under?
They have to do 15%.
Right, but I don't see it in the rubric as a scorable thing. That's just my question. Where would we lower their score for doing that, for not being at the 15%?
We will add it, we'll add it to the breakdown, because we've broken the rubric out for you, so we're gonna get into that, and you'll see where we'll add the language in, okay?
So we'll get a new one before we actually
We'll
get a new rubric.
So we have another document for you, it's in your folders, that dissects the meaning behind a 10, an 8, a 6, a 4, like what do those things mean, that will help guide you through your scoring and rating. And this is where Andy's going to bring you to that. Do you all want a quick 5-minute break? Yes. All right. So you can even actually take a 10-minute break. For 10 minutes. 10-minute break. Come back at 12 o'clock.
I'm going to do something for you so this doesn't keep going. Can you go back to your screen? This one? I'll be right back.
Comments?
I don't know why it did that. When you checked your email, it
Not well
bounced,
written.
remember?
That's a judgment call.
Absolutely.
Correct. This is, it is unclear that you could find this wording anywhere within the
Exactly.
area.
Yep, that's it. Right. Make that alignment directly to the rubric statement. Yep.
But just to piggyback off of that, if we give them
We're really, you're really looking for the scores that are preventing them from being, awarded. We're focusing on the negative. So if you, that's not wrong. But if I give somebody a 10, there's no real need to put a comment justifying that. Basically, by putting a 10, you're indicating that they have completely fulfilled everything.
If they don't need one feature, then maybe we don't need
Correct.
it, because if you do give them an 8, you don't.
Leave it blank. Yeah, leave it blank, but if A2, you did definitely see something, or that was lacking, that justified the score of a 2, then that's where we really want to comment, because that's what we're going to provide them when we give them their, if they're asking for a response.
Gary? Just in the past, no worries. In my past experience, they want to know strength too, like what made it, like areas of improvement is important, but sometimes they wanted to know what was good.
If it were my third grade class, I would give them what they did great and what they did badly.
Don't we have to summarize the strengths? Do we have to summarize the strengths in the debriefing?
I thought you did.
What did Erica say, Andy?
Do we have to summarize the strengths?
So here's what OSC is looking for. If you give it a 10, they don't need comments. In the comments, they're looking for what caused you to deduct points. If you give it a 6 out of 10, they want to know what caused the 4-point deduction.
So going back to what Mary said, and also what Melanie said, specificity is important, not just it's not very well written or it's unclear. If you use the language, we're going to get in, I'm going to show you the language we're talking about, broken down by point value per subsection. Making those direct links, I think, is really the best avenue to follow up. Does that make sense?
And should we have some bearing on the scoring rubric? I mean, is this a standalone? You see how here you have
I'm going to walk you.
qualifier.
I'm going to walk you through that. I'm going to walk you right through it. Yep.
You know, and maybe it'd be helpful to understand why they don't want the negative. If I'm somebody who doesn't win the grant, I come in and you gotta show me, you've got to explain, not you personally, but the explanation is, okay, here's why you didn't win the grant. On page 5, you were to indicate, where 50% of the thing was, you didn't do it. On page 8, they want to be able to just show somebody, you didn't make it because of this, and this. That's all. So.
All right, so now let's just take a look at this, the other document. It's the rubrics, it's the scoring guide and rubric. So what we did was we took that end of the RFP where the rubric information is. This is, we've included that language and then we've added a breakdown of our own. So let me just kind of start off with the first chart. These are the definitions they've provided, that the RFP provides the applicant for globally throughout the entire application, what a very good is, what constitutes a good, what constitutes a fair, what constitutes a poor, and then non-applicable. Is that fair? So this is the language, I would say read this top box very carefully, get that ingrained in your head, because regardless of what the actual prompt is, we're looking for, in order for it to be very good, those conditions. If those conditions aren't met, then going down the rubric to the next level and continuing until you zero in where you want to be. So that this is this first box, global definitions of what constitutes very good, good, fair, and poor, non-applicable. The rest of the document, I'm going to talk right now about just the next section. What we've done is broken down, we've taken out the rubric information from the RFP, we've broken this document down to each of the subsections. So we've got A1, A2, A3, A4, and then all the Bs, and then the 2 sections for section C. So I apologize, the copies are not super clear. The electronic version is certainly much better. Section A, taken right out of the rubric, it briefly describes what the RFP is asking for, or what section A is all about. Okay, just general. Then I'm going to, inside the box, the next chart, A1, the first line. Yep.
You're going to share my
the first line of the table, the actual prompt that the applicant is reading. The prompt says, for A1, please include both qualitative and quantitative information regarding size, grade levels, student composition, staff, and any other information necessary to understand the district as applicable. Then, the next box in the chart is what the rubric says for this section. And again, this is a global statement for this particular question. Both qualitative and quantitative information providing an overview of the district, the extent to which relevant information regarding the applicant's size, grade levels, student composition, staff, and any other information necessary to understand the application is included. So that's what we're asking for. The prompt says, please provide us with this. The rubric response is what we're looking for, and now going through the rest of this table, we broke it down to very specifically say a very good means both quantitative and qualitative information providing a comprehensive overview of the district is included. The applicant provides information regarding size, grade levels, student composition, staff, and other information. The information is complete, detailed, clearly articulated. So if they have met these terms, then give them an 8. If, in looking at the rest of it, the good says that qualitative and quantitative information providing a sufficient overview of the district is included. So we're trying to nuance the language to kind of get you zeroed in a little bit more. The information is adequate to meet the requests of the item, but some of the areas are not fully explained and or questions remain. Fair, for this particular one, the applicant provides descriptive information regarding the district, but it is not specific and lacks focus and detail. Additional information is required to complete the basic request of this item. Poor, the information provided does not fully address the requirements of this item and or largely inaccurate or irrelevant. Substantial clarification is required. And then NA, either they didn't answer it or the answer has nothing to do with it.
So anywhere in the grant application, does it address the option of, not quite a 10, but it's not an 8, I want to give it a 9?
No, there's no ranges.
Does it say yes or no, or does it just leave, it doesn't address it?
No, there's no ranges.
If it doesn't address it, you've got to be very careful not to give any in-between scores. If it didn't address it...
We're not. These are the scores right out of the rubric. These are the scores right out of the rubric.
Right,
so
but a lot of reviewers will just put something in between.
Well, we're not allowed to be clear on that. We're definitely not doing that.
Right, so...
But I've seen it many times.
Well, that's why we gave everybody numbers to circle, so that it's very clear.
And when we've done that, they cross it out and write their own number.
Okay, so very clear that the numbers on the cover sheet are the numbers you're scoring according to. And also, so the way that the scoring rubric is broken down, the way we've kind of dissected it, those can be great sentence starters for your comments, but you're going to need to embellish based on what you saw within the application. So just so that that's clear, you can't just really lift that language. You need to embellish it based on the specifics that you noted when completing your application review. Okay?
And you write into the application cycle code systematically, okay, they give me the student size, they give me the grade level, they give me student composition, okay, that is just going to be not enough. But really go down systematically and write on the application on the margin, yes, particularly the empirical stuff, right?
So the application that you're getting is a copy, so you can write whatever you want to write all over that. Yep, on your application, and then your score sheet, if you want to make 2 versions of these, one that you keep notes on, and then a final that you submit to us, you're free to do that. However, whatever works for you to get the task done. However you review, you know, for me, not necessarily, I'm not as much of a hand writer, I'm more of an electronic worker, so taking notes on something isn't my forte.
Do you collect those copies later, or do we throw them out?
Those copies are yours to shred when you're done with them, file. The only thing we need you to keep a copy of is your final score sheet, and just hang on to that until after we get through the appeals process, in case we need to come back to you. Okay?
So what do we turn it in? That? Okay, we turn that in.
The cover sheet. The cover sheet's going to come back to us. That's it. We try to make this as simple for all of you as possible, so that it can move as quickly as possible. Hi.
Okay. I was just wondering, under some of the sections it says inaccurate information, how do you know if the information they provide about, their background, their relative background is accurate if you don't?
Well, if they provide conflicting data. So if in one instance they say that, like in the beginning when they give you their enrollment, if they say it's 570 students, and then they talk about enrollment again, and they're only telling you they have 200 students. So discrepancies like that would be inaccuracies.
Yeah. Inconsistencies, that was a good word that you
Yeah.
used too. Yeah. Inconsistencies and kind of using that as the same as inaccurate. Somebody else had a question.
I have a question. When we're done with our score sheet, do you want us to do this to the mailbox, or just pick one of you guys and do
Right,
it?
so,
We're gonna get
talk
to
about
that.
next steps, but I'll answer it right now because I know you want it. There's a Title IV mailbox, so we're gonna ask you to go to the Title IV mailbox.
With a copy to all of us.
Audrey, Andy, and Eric.
So I'm gonna send it to 4-5?
You're going to send the email to the Title IV, and you're going to CC the three of us.
See you all. Got it.
Yep.
Okay.
Is the mailbox separated out into files?
Will there be a number associated, or should we just write the name of the applicant and if it's tax or well-rounded or?
Consistency of submission.
Will we send?
I will email you that specific. We haven't yet assigned project numbers yet. I'm waiting for Grants Finance to give me the 4-digit code so that we can go through with all of the districts and assign. So let me get back to you on whether we want you to submit just because if the district applies as a consortium, it's going to make another new one. So let me get back to you on what I want the subject line to be after we figure out what our tracking is going to finalize like. Okay?
So the rest of this document follows suit with what we just kind of talked about. So that's rather than walking through the entire document, looking at the clock and knowing that people are getting hungry, this is it just follows the same way. So. Any more questions, and then we're going to, I think, move on.
What's the last part of the last one? What's the priority point? Do we have to wait?
We're going to get there, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a second here.
You guys are all think aheaders.
What's the final version of the document, or did you say you were going to update it?
Oh, we did.
That one,
Update, I gave you a new one.
The cover sheet was updated.
Yes.
So, yes,
right, so you did this,
Yep.
right? Priority points. So there's 5 priority points available for districts to receive. It's based on poverty numbers. We can pre-populate it. Yeah, we'll pre-populate that for you, or we'll tell you to assign them. We'll give you a list of who to assign the priority points to, because it needs to be verified through the poverty data, because anybody who's above 60%, but for a consortium, it's the average of the consortium. So instead of having you do all of that math, we'll do that math for you. Okay?
You know if they have to meet their minimum score to be funded before the awarding of the 5 points, or can that be attributed to the minimum score?
I have to go back and look. I think it's before, but I would have to go back through the RFP, the award methodology. I think it's, did I write it in here?
It's in here, Rebecca, that's it.
Yeah. And the priority points are based on the 16-17 beds data. The next range applicant, are they giving the opportunity? Yeah, I would have to go back through. So we're going to make the awards in rank order of score until there's insufficient funds to give any more. And if you read the RFP, so you know the $28.5 million isn't spread equally across the board. Each content area has a different funding amount threshold with it. So there's not as much money in safe and healthy schools as well-rounded in technology. But there's $11.4 million in the technology buckets. Does that sound right?
I found the answer to his question in the grant.
Okay. What does it say, Gary?
So it reads, proposals must receive a minimum of 60 points before priority points are awarded.
Okay. 5.7.
The bucket number 2, at the least.
So then, if you read through the frequently asked questions that we sent around, as I said, 46 pages, 183 questions. There were actually more than that. That's what it ended up being after we deleted duplicates. The major questions were around eligibility, am I eligible, allowable activities, project funding, how do they determine what their maximum cumulative award is, you know, what constitutes a comprehensive needs assessment, and again, what is equitable participation. So a lot of the things we touched on today and hopefully clarified for you today. If you happen to be looking through the FAQ and you have questions about it, let us know, or if any of you have questions about it now, we can address those now. No?
You're supposed to use specific enrollment data. Is it incumbent upon the score to cross-check that your data is correct?
No.
The whole thing was a dead 16, 17.
Yeah, no, don't do the legwork of cross-checking. Okay?
Do we have, is it incumbent upon the score to do anything about cross-checking indirect cost rates?
On the budget?
Yeah.
Maria will catch it.
Yeah.
What way would you check?
No, we'll take care of the indirect cost rates of anybody who receives an award. Yeah, so no. We will take care of that. Yes?
Do you have an idea yet of which bus it will be assigned to, or is that?
No, because we have no idea how many applications per bucket are coming in. That's really the driving force behind this. So the timeline, the way that this is going to work out is next week at some point I'll schedule a quick little WebEx. If you can't join in, no worries. If you want to join in, yay. It'll be a quick little FAQ session for anybody who, after you digest all of this, you decide you have, you know, questions that you want answered. It just gives us a platform to be able to record it and send it out to the group in case they also have the same sort of questions.
I was just, I don't know who I was talking to, but during one of the breaks, but I would encourage you for this, the follow-up, just because once we get into once the applications come to us and we start reviewing, we're not really going to have we will not have an opportunity to discuss. Right. So it's best to, you know, mull this over, those lingering questions, be a part of it, so we're all clear going forward exactly what we're up against. Because again, once we start reviewing, we really kind of have a,
Mama. I haven't heard or seen any discussion of a conflict of interest form with this RFP yet.
So the MWBE is coming in. I'm not sure.
Now, usually scores are added to ensure they have conflict. Yeah. I taught in Syracuse. I shouldn't score Syracuse.
Right. That is a good point. Yeah. All right. So at any point in time, we'll send a form. Okay, we'll send you a form, but if you get an application and you believe you have a conflict of interest, typically, a federal standard typically is if you had anything to do with the development of the application itself. That is really the only conflict of interest that permits you, or if you happen to sit on the school board for a given district, that would be a direct conflict of interest. So if you have any financial interest or gain in the application, that would be a conflict of interest. What?
What happens if you taught there?
Is that a conflict, Gary?
I didn't hear what you
If she taught in a school district?
So here's the way that OSD looks at conflict of interest. There's actually 3 different categorizations. 2 are not okay, 1 is okay. If you have a working relationship through your role at SED with a particular applicant, that's okay. If you have a working relationship or any relationship with this entity outside of your role at SED, that's not okay. So a teacher, like John just said, if perhaps your sister-in-law is an employee of the district, that's not okay. So familiar relationships, working relationships as your role here is okay. Any working relationships outside of your SED role, that's not okay.
Do you mean direct relationships outside? For example, those of us who perhaps are sport officials at school districts, it's not a direct relationship with them. So
I think that you're right.
It's indirect, exactly. So that's
I would think that would be okay.
that I was talking about.
Yeah.
Can we say the president or something like?
So your managers have done that for you when they
They don't have a manager.
So the all-call that went out through senior leadership, the form that we sent gave them the ability to assign you a preference. There was a clause that went along with that. If you were given a preference, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get that preference. When they submitted your names to us, some of them gave us your preferences and some of them said you had no preference. So
My manager's not, she retired a few weeks ago, and I was never asked what my preference is.
They didn't.
again, there is no guarantee that we're going to be able to assign you applications within those preference areas anyways, because we also have to assign you as a team. So with the nuance with that, if your background, if you are strong in technology, we need to have an equal pairing with you so we don't have a discrepancy of more than 15 points. If we don't have an equal partner for you, you're probably not going to get assigned to the bucket of technology because we need you someplace else to equal out. Okay? Yeah.
Are you talking about MWBE?
No, we don't need to worry about MWBE because the contracts unit is going to do all of that. It's a requirement of the grant. It's coming in on a CD and it's going over there. I was told I have to do nothing with MWBE. She told me not to worry about it.
It's not
Should be a budget line in there for MWBE?
We don't have to score it for MWBE, no.
MWBE should play no factor in your score.
No.
But it's an attachment.
It's an attachment for them to fill out, yes, and they have to do the work plan associated with it, but it's going to, the contracts unit, once the awards are made, they will run their magic with determining if they meet the MWBE requirements. That's not for you to determine, that's not for us to determine. I got the all clear on that this morning.
There are some pre-qualification requirements for some applicants here. Is that incumbent upon the score too?
Nope, because the pre-qualification only applies to charter schools who need to register in the contract system. So no, you don't have to do anything with that.
It's becoming increasingly common in the department to do some type of inter-rater reliability, scoring 1 or 2 sample contracts or real applications, comparing your scores. Are we planning anything?
No, we're not doing anything of that nature from what I understand because of the way that this is structured. So we have no past applications to pull from to be able to do that. We have no samples to give you. This has never been done before. This is the first time here and now that this is being done. It's the first time for the department to run the grant in this way, and there's no samples. We're only getting live applications come the due date.
And we can't use a lie that, there's no disqualification process, so we won't have a disqualified application to pull from. And we can't use a real application for everybody, because then it would be unfair. It would inadequately weight them in the scoring process. So, so no, there is no inter-rater reliability running for this one. Okay?
When could I ask a question about a specific rubric?
Well, you can ask it now.
No? Okay. All right, B2, I have a question. I don't understand it, the wording of the rubric. Because it says, I think there's extra words in there or something. B2.
Okay.
This is, applicant should provide detailed information regarding the evidence-based activities. Chosen activities need to be aligned with local needs and ensure are the evidence-based with and local capacity is considered when a strategy was selecting a strategy.
Pulled right out of the RFP, so it's held up in the RFP.
Right, yours seems to be really different than mine.
Yeah, mine
too. So applicants should provide detailed information regarding chosen activities need to be aligned with local needs and ensure the evidence-based and local capacity are considered when selecting a strategy.
Are you talking about the second box?
Yeah.
That was taken from the RFP. The rubric in the RFP is as it was posted, so. I would pay attention to the breakdown is accurate.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't, I
So
don't know why we're worried about that.
Yeah, it's just a typo.
I go by the top.
Yeah, yeah, it's just a typo.
Okay, now I see.
Yeah. Oh, the budget, once we review the budget, are we supposed to sign off on the budget, or is that something you all?
No, don't sign off on the budget. We will sign off on the budget after we determine the allowability. Well, because you won't know who gets awarded either. Okay? And we'll have the original copies of the budgets anyways.
Just generally, would you know, would anyone know, the department created the BOCES. Is it in statute that they can't participate in it in grants? And it seems kind of subversive or dual personality that we create something that builds consortia of school districts, and then we disallow them when we're asking for consortia applications.
Well, they can use them as a vendor. They can't be a lead applicant, and they are not an eligible applicant, so they can't apply for the grant.
Is that in statute, do you know?
Right. Other questions? Uh-oh. I don't know why this keeps doing this.
Video not connected to the, hopefully there is no video. Well, wouldn't that-
All right, so we will schedule that. Hi.
On the cover sheet, did you say that we can't hold the numbers because we can't, you all are going to be the ones who give the priority points?
And we're going to provide you with a list of the schools that are eligible, will be receiving.
Or you could just add a subtotal field.
We could do that, or because we already have the list of the schools that are getting the priority points. We already have that work done. So we can do it, we can email you to include the 5 priority points.
When we have their assignments.
Right, when you have your assignment.
It's not gonna, just to your point about providing a list, but if it's a consortium, it's an average, so.
Yeah. Right. Right, but we have that, I believe we already have that done. We have an Excel file that has all of the, anybody will pull in, we'll do the average of those that would be eligible for the 5 priority points. So February 16th, the applications are due to us by close of business. That is postmarked and or hand delivered to Rebecca. In which
I'm saying that's
I've seen it.
We gave you home.
So because the 19th is a holiday, that gives our office the 20th through the 23rd for application intake and assignments to be made. So we are going to be moving at a clip. And we're hoping that the following Monday, we will have all of the assignments to you so that you can all begin your reviews. February 26th to March 16th is the application review.
The cover sheets need to be sent back to us, to the Title IV mailbox, Andy, with a copy to Andy, Audrey, and myself as they are completed. So it's not wait till they're all done. As you finish one, please send it so that we can start tabulating and getting, especially if we have 1,000 applications, it's going to take us some time to manage that. And then,
Being the Title I office, do we have to send a hard copy?
no, we don't need a hard copy. You need to keep the, no, so I was saying, we are the Title I office, Title IV mailbox, Andy, Audrey, that's why the little colon is there.
Oh, okay, the colon on that
Yeah.
page, thank you.
Yeah, okay. And then March 16th to the 23rd, if any third reviews need to take place, we are doing that, the three of us, and our manager, Jason, will be conducting the third reviews on those applications. Questions about the timeline?
So this group of scores outside of you guys can anticipate not doing any third review?
Yes, no, you will not get any third reviews. And we also have a fourth, fifth backup if we need it. So no, you will not be doing any third reviews. You're just doing the initial. Okay? So you guys should all be wrapped up by March 16th.
Right.
Yes.
As far as the review, the cover sheet, as you finish them, you want them to send, you don't want us to send them all in a group.
No, you need to send them as you complete them. Yep, please. Okay? I don't know what is going on with this thing. I know, but it keeps jumping like I'm the host. I'm not the host. Doesn't know if I'm the host. But then it lets me do this. There we go. All right. So a couple of reminders. Before you score, please make sure you read the RFP if you haven't done it already so that you have any questions. You want to read through the FAQ and all of the rubrics as well. That does, yeah, that should say minimum passing score, I guess, is 60 out of 105 points. I'll need to adjust that.
Out of 100.
Out of 100.
Yeah.
It'll be 105.
Well, I think it's 5 priority points.
Then it would be
That's
65.
before minimum passing is, looked at.
But what if they score a 100 and then get 5 priority points? The rubric's out of 100 and then there's 5 priority points for a total of 105.
This is for your, minimum passing score should be 60 out of 100.
Right.
Okay,
That makes
yeah,
sense.
got it. Yeah.
So if you get a 55 plus priority points, you can't win an award.
You wouldn't get the priority points if you get a 55. You have to get a 60 first, and then you can get the priority points. All right. So you need to score each application individually, holistically, and without regard to another application. Please provide detailed comments that justify the scores that you give. Do not refer to another application when making those comments. And do not discuss the applications with any other reviewers. If you have questions, contact me, Andy, or Audrey.
And we're gonna get a modified cover sheet that'll have a comment for each line.
So here is our contact information if you need us. We sit in EB 320. If you want to pop over, come pop over.
How will you be distributing the applications to the scorers?
We are going to have somebody physically bring them and hand them to you. And then you will sign a little sheet saying, I have received my application, and it will come back. Yeah? Yes.
We're getting all the applications at one time.
All at one time. You're getting them all at one time.
So if they're not there that day, it's not left, right? And deliver it.
Right. So,
There, they won't leave it.
hold on, we have a couple of questions. Pause. If I knew that. Will you send e-copies of the proposals in Microsoft Word? So we're sending people off-site based in New York City and Peekskill e-copies of the applications. Everybody here will have a physical copy of the application. You will not get an e-copy of your application. Yeah.
when we are not working on these applications, do they need to be secured, locked up? Having a sign for them, is there some sort of security measure and all that?
Not that I'm aware of, Gary? No, right?
Put them in your desk.
Yeah, we'll
Just don't lose them.
I wouldn't leave them open on your desk, but put them in a drawer, a cabinet.
But they don't have to
It
be.
doesn't have to be locked.
No.
No. No, there shouldn't be any confidential information, where like, there's nothing, yeah, there shouldn't be any shouldn't be any confidential information in there. There's no specific student identifier, so there shouldn't be any reason why they can't be, just don't lose them.
Leave them open with 100 on them.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate your help with this. You know, at the end, we'll have a little party, woohoo. We'll have a little celebration. And again, you know where to find us, so thank you again. We appreciate it. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. See you at the Q&A. Yeah. That's the Q&A.
I did.